Now that the Red Death arc has ended, the final season of The Flash has 8 episodes left to wrap everything up and go out with a bang, potentially, for not just the show but for the Arrowverse. In their infinite wisdom, however, the writers of The Flash decided that 8 episodes is far too many for this final arc. So let's instead dedicate 2 episodes in between to what they're calling an interlude, something they've been doing for a few seasons now, and something that always produces the absolute worst episodes, most pointless filler episodes the show can possibly produce. Even though the Red Death arc was very cringy at times and borderline bad for the most part, at least Barry was there, at least there was some Flash action and fun moments. There was something. This episode, which is Season 9, Episode 6, titled The Good, the Bad, and the Lucky, has absolutely nothing to offer. The episode puts its focus on the supporting cast who've been dragging the show down for years now with their irrelevance. The Red Death arc would have been way better off without them. Season 6, 7, 8, they all would have been better off without these characters who are all terrible. Every episode that focuses on them is terrible as well. Usually with these reviews, I go over how the supporting characters bring down the episode before anything else, maybe after everything else, but it's always a large focus on the reviews because there's no getting past this awful cast. This episode doesn't have anything else, it's just the supporting characters, meaning it has 0 redeeming qualities. The episode focuses on the big 5 of the show: Cecile, Chester, Allegra, Chilblain, and Khione, all of whom get their own storyline or at the very least some developments, which I refuse to believe anyone aside from Eric Wallace himself in the entire world cares about any of this. Cecile's story follows up on the asinine, irresponsible, ridiculous conclusion to hers and Joe's storyline in the Red Death arc, where they decided that Joe and Jenna will leave and Cecile will stay behind and visit on weekends because Team Flash just needs her too much. In this story that's going wrong, which connects to her being a bad parent, I mean, I feel like a broken record in saying this, but nobody cares. I think we all wish her powers would indeed just stop working for good. I wish she'd stop feeling other people's emotions, and that stupid goddamn sound effect that I've come to hate can just leave forever, even though it's only 8 episodes before it will indeed leave forever. Am I also supposed to root for her when Allegra tells her that she's a hero and that Jenna doesn't need any more than that in a mother? The writing is so tone-deaf and absolutely disgraceful when it comes to their perception of good parenting. I mean, the episode focuses on Cecile worrying that she's a bad mom, and then because of that her powers don't work, but then Allegra quote-unquote sets her straight and her powers work again. But that doesn't change the fact that Cecile's worries were right. She is in fact a bad mom, and she's still being a bad mom. And I don't know, the episode's perception on this is kind of disgusting if you ask me. The whole story arc simply makes no sense. Every step that had to be taken over the years to get to the point we are right now with Cecile and her story and development is absolutely beyond comprehension in its levels of stupidity. Cecile is the worst character on a show that just might have the single worst supporting cast in CW history, both of which is saying a lot. And it doesn't help that this part of the episode is also terribly written, with some very cringy dialogue, some terrible acting and delivery. I gotta say, this was very difficult to get through, especially when I know in my heart of hearts none of this means anything, and the only reason I'm really watching it is so that I can make this review. Also, the story follows Becky Sharp, which is, I guess, fine. I mean, she did die, and her death was very important to the plot of Season 4. But whatever, the crisis happened. The episode needed at least one character who isn't one of the supporting characters, but also at the same time, she's very over the top and goofy, and there are so many other not dead characters they could have used that wouldn't have shifted the plot of the much better season that we really took for granted initially in Season 4. They make this reference to the comics that her fiance is a gambler, his brother calls him the Gambler, and if you've seen Stargirl or know anything about Becky Sharp's comic history, you know that she is the daughter of the JSA villain, the Gambler. So to make that reference through her fiance, so her fiance is now kind of an adaptation of her father, that's a bit weird. Khione and Chilblain have their own storyline as well, which was never going to be anything but completely skippable. Mark's actor is trying his best, but god, this story is so stupid. I've been over this so many times in these videos, how unforgivably stupid Khione's existence is, and then dedicating half an episode to this third version of Caitlyn discovering her powers after Caitlyn was killed off and then nobody cared. It's the type of thing I just can't comprehend how it made it into the show. They thought of the idea, they wrote it into the script, they filmed it, edited it, everything. It had to go through so many stages to get to the actual screen. It makes no sense to me. It's beyond comprehension. This particular part of the story is written well enough, and the acting, especially for Mark's actor, is actually really good, but it's like the subreddit awful taste but great execution. If the concept is that bad, no good amount of acting or even like writing of the dialogue can make up for the terrible concept. Chester and Allegra are also big players in this episode, with Chester specifically being in both stories, and I think it's gotten to the point, now that the Will They Won't They has ended, that Chester and Allegra probably don't have much story left in them, so they could just sit back and contribute to the show by Chester being the smart tech guy in the chair and Allegra being, I guess, just a superhero. There are moments between Chester and Allegra which would be fine on their own, except other characters constantly mention how cute they are, which is very cringy. But Chester himself is fine in this episode. He contributes, isn't actively annoying, and doesn't do anything wrong. This is kind of true for Allegra, but to a lesser extent. Her speech to Cecile about her parenting was brain dead, but that feels more like a Cecile problem than anything, and Allegra's use of her powers also looks very exciting when put next to Cecile. All of this is to say, Chester and Allegra were mostly inoffensive parts of this pointless episode, and were surrounded by much worse characters than they are. That isn't to say that they were good, just not as bad as everything else. And I don't really have much more to say about this episode. There isn't much substance to it. It feels like I'm making the same complaints I made in previous videos, but here it's the only thing the episode has, making it quite possibly the most pointless episode The Flash has ever had, which is very magnified by the fact that this is the 8th to last episode. There may be a more pointless episode in a previous season with a previous interlude, but just the fact that this is the final season and one of the 8 last episodes is dedicated to filler is so ridiculous. But it's not just the fact that it's filler. This episode is also actively bad. The only characters left with any merit, Barry and Iris, are barely in it. It focuses on Cecile coming to terms with her bad parenting, but then she doesn't do anything about it, and then gaslights herself into thinking that it's okay. The third version of Caitlin gaining her powers, and I guess also not being a meta or a human. I didn't mention that because who cares? And also undermining the structure of the 4th season with Becky Sharp, a season that was clowned on when it came out, but god damn it, did we take it for granted. I'd give this episode a very solid 1 out of 10. Very, very difficult to get through, no substance, an embarrassing waste of an episode in the final season of The Flash and the final season of the Arrowverse. Oh, and by the way, I won't be making a video reviewing the next episode because I'll be on vacation and I won't be able to. I've made a couple videos in advance, but I can't make a review for an episode that isn't out yet, so instead I'll be making a review of the Red Death arc in advance, and I'll be posting it on that day. But with that in mind, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below about this episode, and if you somehow found a way to enjoy it, because I definitely did not. And if you like this video, make sure to leave a like, share, and subscribly dibble. And if you haven't seen all of my reviews of this season so far, definitely go check them out, because they're great. They're incredible. Bye.